Lawless.
Thank you, Chair. I'll ask a number of questions and I'll yield the remainder of my time to Deputy James Lawless, who obviously represents Kildare constituency immediately impacted. In the course of the evidence, and I want to welcome Patricia King for returning to this committee, and I want to acknowledge the compelling evidence by Ms Loba in terms of her, I suppose, direct contact with the workers impacted. Can I just ask two questions? I think there's no doubt that much of the terms and conditions of employment in the meat industry are things which must be addressed, particularly the bogus issue of bogus self-employment. And there are matters which I've no doubt the trade union movement have been working on long before this and will continue to do that. For the remit of this committee, obviously, the impact of the virus is our focus. And I think the learning point seems to be that where there is co-living and close working with very little public transport options, that there is an inevitability that we will lead to a cluster. But can I ask each of the witnesses, it looked for so long that meat industry plants would not be impacted in the same way as they were elsewhere in Europe, particularly in June and July. Have any of the representatives been given any information as to why this has happened now? Many people in Ireland are saying, what happened in this region? Why was the virus allowed to develop here? And what was the source of it?
Well, may I speak? Yes. I would just like to emphasize again that, in our opinion, any kind of PPE and health and safety measures that are adopted in the workplace that are not corroborated with an adjustment in the workflow, in the pace of work, will be ineffective, because basically what we have noticed is even in workplaces where there was a workers' health and safety committee, they were never consulted as to the suitability of these measures in relation to how they are expected to do their work. Production never slowed down. So I have sources in killing, in dispatch, in packing, in boning, in all parts of the meat plant, and actually the volume processed in all the meat plants we are in contact with has constantly increased, while there were actually less workers because the companies couldn't source foreign workers at the height of lockdown, and also when some workers got ill, others just had to do more work. So basically, if you introduce a perspex screen, like I was saying, but then workers have to lift heavy crates and pass them on to each other, and they have to actually lift them.
I hesitate to interrupt, but I think you have made a very strong case as to why the environment... So
then these situations are unavoidable. This is what I want to say. And also, we had...
Have workers' representatives been given any information as to how this cluster was initiated? What was the source of this cluster? Have workers' representatives been getting any information from the public health authorities in regards to that?
From SIP2's perspective, we haven't received information from the public health bodies except what we followed through NEFID and so on. But just to say that why did it reoccur, Deputy, I think is what you asked. I think in the end of June, early July, we had 1,115 cases. We now have 1,450 and heading upwards. I think it's because our guard has been relaxed. I think it's because that we need more focused inspections, which to me is that, along with speed results on testing. They are the two key weapons we have against this now in the meat industry. And as we reopen our economy, and it's a scary thought because meat will always be an essential foodstuff, as we further reopen our economy, if we do not do the things both inside the workplace and outside the workplace, and we don't deal with the vectors that I mentioned earlier of no sick pay, of workers living in terrible conditions and so on, we will see more cases, unfortunately. And, you know, in my contribution today, my written contribution, you will see a link to an interview I did in June with one of the media outlets where this was predicted. We don't always get it right. Unfortunately, in this case, we were right, and I have grave fears now as we move into the autumn and into the winter with the bout of influenza that will probably come, with employments reopening up as they should. I have real fears. So I think we can get it right, but we have to throw everything at it. We need COVID compliance officers. We need to ensure inspections are unannounced and are happening in a saturated way right across the meat plants in the areas that you represent, Deputy.